Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I first want to start off by thanking every single person that's been reaching out to me about our safety here in New Orleans, Louisiana, as the hurricane, we're now hurricane probably by the time this video goes live. It might even be a tropical storm and might have actually made landfall at this point, but we are doing okay right now in the state of New Orleans. If you look at the radar, it's almost like all the storms are pretty much going around us. That does not mean that we're completely out of the, any danger possibly. We had some rain earlier. We probably have some more rain as the day goes on, probably with some wind as well. I would say the worst thing that will probably happen is some street flooding and probably losing some power at some point. So I do have a live stream scheduled for tonight, and if for any reason I do lose power, I will of course let you guys know. But it seems to me that things are going as well as they possibly can, at least for my area. But I do want to extend thoughts and prayers out to other areas where they are much closer to the storm, because even though it might be just a Category 1, even if it was just a tropical storm, there's enough storm surge, there's enough rain, there's enough wind that could do a lot of damage, and there's probably going to be at least some life loss. And so anyone that ever jokes about storms, and I live in a city where people constantly joke about these things, even though we should know above anything else not to joke about these things, even if it is just a Cat 1, even if it is just a tropical storm, that even this, like the small storm, even just a random rainstorm can cause a lot of damage. And so I just want to send my thoughts and prayers out there. But anyway, getting now to the news of today from Cosmic News. DC vs. Marvel is back on, says Joker director. So this is actually pretty exciting for me, because obviously we're current stage with the MCU where everything is pretty much going in a very bad direction, at least what it seems like. As you can see up there, you've got the wonderful, the amazing, the mostly talented Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, and that it fortunately seems to be the case as to where the future of the franchise is going to be focused on. We'll get a little bit more. I think that there's talk about there possibly being a little bit more information revealed at Comic-Con this year. Obviously D23 is going to be a bigger release of that, since Disney has its own convention now. It's so huge, especially with Marvel and Star Wars and everything like that. So we'll find out more hopefully as the months go on, but I really do hope for the sake of the future of the MCU, even though I'm not planning to support any future MCU films, that they decide to go in a very different direction. Though of course with the decisions that they have been making, I highly doubt that is the case. So what we can do is look forward to the future films coming out of the DCU, even though there's obviously still a lot of things to be worried about. For example, we're kind of concerned about, or at least I'm concerned about, Birds of Prey, because there seems to have been some information leaked about the plot. There seems to be some information leaked about certain characters and what they're doing with certain characters that are obviously going in a much more woke direction, which seems like some of the mainstream DCU properties are trying to copy Marvel as far as going woke, which they should learn. Yeah, it might do well for them now because they're such a big property that they've been building up for 11 years, but going into the future, I don't think that's really going to be a good thing for them, seeing that this upcoming generation of people we have are very much against this SJWism, very much against this identity politics nonsense. And if they're the ones that are growing up and they're the ones that are starting to see these movies and they're starting to recognize it in their movies a lot more, then they're going to be much more likely to resist them going forward in the future. So obviously they might be okay for the next year or two, but as the next few years go on, I would not be surprised to see the overall sales, the overall budgets, and the overall ticket sales for these Marvel films going down the hill. So the one thing that can possibly save the DC universe is what is going on here and being talked about by the Joker here for the film. And so as it says there, watch out Marvel, the new DCU is coming after you, and it starts with Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. It's no secret that Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige have been the king of the hill, as the MCU has generated billions of dollars over a span of 11 years with the release of 23 movies. Zack Snyder and Warner Brothers attempted to tackle Marvel with their DCU, but failed, as the releases of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and Justice League failed to compete and compare. Now, a lot of DC fanboys might not want to agree with that statement, but let's just be honest here. None of those films could ever compete with what the MCU has built up. Like, that's just a fact. That's just a verifiable fact. You can look at the box office numbers, and also you can compare the audience and critic scores too. Obviously, I don't really trust critic scores that much, but even audience scores, the people that are actually going out to see the films, didn't really love the films that were coming out of Zack Snyder's DCU. And I think that the best thing they can do is try to distance themselves as far as possible from that universe. But the question, of course, and the big problem is, well, a lot of those films set up characters and set up actors as characters that unfortunately are still attached to this universe. And obviously, I love Jason Momoa as Aquaman, I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, but it's almost making it very difficult because they don't want to get rid of those characters, but they also can't necessarily do a full reboot without doing so. And so I think they're kind of stuck in this rock between a rock and a hard place. However, what they're doing now seems to be, I think, a good future for them going forward. The new DCU is focusing on smaller budget flicks that are director and producer driven, centering on characters instead of big shared universe. And I think if they can do that well, and based on this first trailer, and again, obviously we can't know everything from a trailer, it seems like this is going to be a good direction for them. Let's hope they don't try and put, even in a smaller story with a smaller budget, identity politics nonsense, because obviously there was some rumors for a while that There might be certain characters that are based off of certain current political persons, which I really hope is not the case because that would just completely suck. But if they don't do that route and then instead focusing on the Joker's character and focusing on Joaquin Phoenix's performance, then I think they could probably bring in, even for a small budget, a crap ton of money and start to rebuild that interest in the DC universe, especially with one of the most famous and one of the most well-known and popular universes, which is, of course, the Batman universe. Because if you have this great film work out, you could potentially bring Joaquin Phoenix back into another film that reintroduces a new version of the Batman. I'm not talking about the newer, like, bigger universe Batman, but I'm talking about a much better version, because obviously we don't want to see Sparkle Batman, at least not at this point in time. DC ready to take on Marvel. Speaking with Empire Magazine, Joker director Todd Phillips offers the DC vs. Marvel war is full on and they can do a better job. Todd Phillips pitched Joker to Warner Brothers executives at the after party of War Dog's premiere. He suggested they begin a new division called DC Black, separating itself from the current crop of DC films. It was also a way of differentiating from Marvel, and I think that that differentiation is a good thing because they don't want to just separate from Marvel. I think they also would do good and do well to separate from their own property, from their own DC properties, because if they make it clear that this is a new addition, this is a new division, and that they're going to focus on better stories, and as long as they try and stay out of the identity politics range, I think that it could end up being a very good thing, because that is how they can slowly build audiences over time. Great example of this would be John Wick. John Wick is not a huge big budget film, or at least even like the current, even John Wick 3 wasn't the biggest budget film possible, but when it first started off, it was made for even less money. But what happened? It built a fan base. Number two, listen to the fans, respected the fans, and continued to build more and more and more, and now you have it to the point where now there are so many people. It's making over $400 million at the box office, or over $300 million at the box office for John Wick 3, which is almost twice as much as the last film. And so you start to see that these films are doing so much better because they're listening to the fans and they're focusing on what people actually want to see. If DC Dark can do the same thing, or DC Black, if DC Black can do the same thing, then they could build that fan base up over time as well, and also at the same time, hopefully, recoup some of the people that they lost with their bigger budget films. Now, of course, that's going to require some type of a reboot, some type of a change in direction, which it seems like they're trying to go in. So I'm really hoping that Birds of Prey, that they really start to try and get that thing controlled, because if they're doing everything that they say they're going to be doing with Birds of Prey, that is not a good direction, because that is you following in the footsteps of Marvel. In fact, what they're trying to do is do certain characters in a certain way before Marvel does, trying to say, look, we were the first ones to do it, but in doing so, you're going to end up sacrificing good stories and character arcs to push forth a social agenda, which nobody wants to see. So I'm really hoping that DC Black can be that differentiating factor that not only separates it from Marvel, but also from the DC properties as well, from the bigger budget DC films. So obviously I'm looking forward to Wonder Woman 1984, looking forward to Aquaman 2, and those bigger films. But I'm really concerned, though, that some of their other projects, like The Suicide Squad being a sequel slash reboot slash not a reboot, it's really confusing as to what it's going to be. Or Birds of Prey, having certain characters be a certain way that are not contingent or not conducive, or rather consistent. Not consistent with the characters that were laid out in the comics. And I think that if they stay closer to the comics and stay closer to the actual source material, they'll do better off. Now, this is the big thing too, is that even though I'm actually looking forward to DC Black, they've also gone on record, these are the same people who've also gone on record saying that the Joker is not going to rely on the source material and it's going to do its own thing. Now, obviously, I think that that could be a good thing, because it means that they're not going to have to fulfill expectations if they're going to follow a certain storyline, but it's also going to leave certain comics fans in the dust, because they're going to see a character and say, wait a minute, this is nothing like the character that we know and love. This is nothing like the character that we've been, raised with our entire lives. And so you might end up losing some of them, not all of them, but some of them. Now, obviously, I think as long as they're being very clear saying this is going to be its own thing, and it's going to be in its own separate universe, which they're saying right here, I think that they could possibly get away with it to a certain extent. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for this film? Are you excited for a DC Black? Are you excited for this newer division of Warner Brothers, this newer division of the DC films? I think that it has a lot of potential, but obviously I think that there's also a lot of things that could go wrong with it as well, especially if they follow the same footsteps that were set aside and set forward by the Zack Snyder franchise going before it. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, guys, if you like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe, it helps me out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hopefully I'll see you guys for the live stream tonight. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.